probably get underway. Welcome to Rockstars and Consultants, who needs them. I thought I'd start off, just for the heck of it, with dogs. You guys have seen enough cats, right? So these are my dogs. That's Finnegan and Tim. You will see them again. Okay, my name is Lori Olson. My Twitter handle is WNDXLori, and WindXLori. I keep a blog at windex.posters.com. Yeah, it hasn't been updated for a while, but I'm planning to do more. I am a freelance developer, mostly doing Rails work these days, but I also speak at conferences, and I have done a few workshops. First one was Ruby on Rails for Real. It was a workshop focused on teaching Rails to enterprise developers. And then just last month, we developed a new workshop, Rails for iOS, which is Rails for iOS developers, just focused on the kinds of things that iOS developers might want. So enough about me. So really, consultants and rock stars. Who really needs them? Well, I think actually you guys do. And in fact, everybody does. Heck, there's even a reality TV series starting this fall dealing with rockstar developers. Personally, I think that's kind of sad. But the simple fact is, at one time or another, every shop is going to need to hire either that rockstar developer or a consultant to come in, hired gun to troubleshoot or help you out. The real question, I think, is not really, why we need these people. It's why we continue to need them. And that's really the interesting part that I want to get into. So before we get into that part, let's talk about a bit about what actually makes a rock star. A rock star developer. Have any of you guys ever been called a rock star developer? Come on, put up your hands, yeah. Just a couple. How about, other tags have been applied to you that, might be considered rock star? How about ninja? Yeah, you've heard those ones too. Yeah. So these rock star developers, these ninjas, they know everything. And it's not just that. They are self-motivated learners. They learn new things because they enjoy learning new things. They've done it all before. They've seen everything, been there, done that. They are super productive. Once you hire them, they'll get it done fast, and they'll get those critical releases, that minimum viable product that'll be out the door before you know it. Because we all need a superhero every now and then, don't we? Another aspect of the rockstar developer is that they have no fear, or no technical fear. Their motto might be something like, the difficult we do immediately, the impossible might take a little longer. Okay, so enough about rockstar developers. Let's talk about consultants. What is it that we hire consultants for? They come in a couple of different varieties. One of them is the expert. They know one thing really, really well. They have deep knowledge of some critical piece of your infrastructure, your technology stack, and you need that help. Sometimes they know hard things. The stuff that your team doesn't have time to do. How to tune that database, how to scale your app up to those 5 million users you suddenly have. These are the problems that your team might think is a little too hard to tackle on their own. So you bring in the experts. And often these experts are not just individuals, they might be part of a group, a consultancy. And a consultancy has other advantages. They have a really deep knowledge pool because they have all their colleagues to call on too. So individually, they may not be experts in everything, but collectively, a consultancy can be expert in absolutely everything. And that's what groups like ThoughtWorks do, Hash Rocket, guys like that come along and help you out. So, now that we know what Rockstar developers are like and what consultancies are like, if they're so great, why would we not want to hire them? Or why would we want to, get rid of them after a while? Well, there are some downsides to hiring Rockstar developers and consultants. We'll start off with the Rockstar developers. One of the risks is they'll get bored. These self-motivated learners, if there's nothing new for them to learn anymore, they get bored. Next new exciting opportunity comes along, they run away. Or worse, they don't run away. So another problem with your Rockstar developers is burnout. They know everything, they do everything, and so they do everything. They work insane hours, and then they burn out. I don't know how many of you guys know Ezra, but last year, this was one of his tweets. And, the guy almost died because he was at extreme levels of burnout. So, this isn't something that you want to do to your rockstar. Another one of the risks for rockstars is what I like to refer to as the illusion of the big payoff. If you hire a rock star and promise to pay them, gazillion dollars and get them those big stock options, and then you fail to deliver that promptly, they'll leave. Some other opportunity will come along with that big payoff being dangled in front of them, and they'll walk out the door chasing it. Or maybe you'll succeed in delivering that big payoff. Suddenly they have great big bags of cash, and they leave. This is the problem with the big payoff. It's great for Rockstar developers, it really is. It's a lose-lose for the companies that hire them. Okay, one of the other risks. Everybody always jokes about this, right? You get hit by a bus. What if that vital key person that you've hired gets hit by a bus? That's, sort of a bad thing. Because all of a sudden, they're gone, and there's no one to do everything that they've done. Another problem with Rockstar developers is that they do tend to have a type. I just say tend to. They're not all like this, but the official definition of prima donna, someone who behaves in a demanding, often temperamental fashion, revealing an inflated view of themselves, their talent, and their importance. Yeah, ever encountered anybody like that? And last but not least, a rock star, somebody who answers an ad for a Rockstar developer position. They know what they're worth. They don't come cheap. Now, consultants, on the other hand, are usually wildly expensive. They will lack buy-in for your company. They won't have the knowledge of your business. They won't know about your operational limits. They won't really care about your long-term plans. They're there for their contract. Then, of course, another problem with consultancies is the old bait and switch. where you hire them for their expertise, and they have that expertise. But, was busy somewhere else, so they send in the B team to you guys. Because, they can call on those other experts. That's not really the way to pay them the big bucks for it, is it? Another problem that you can have is culture clash. I also think of this as sort of an impedance mismatch between consultants and your team, the way they look at problems and solutions, and the way your team looks at problems and solutions can be different. And those kinds of communications problems can be kind of difficult to manage. You may not have your consultants complete focus. It's entirely possible that they're not just working for you. They may have 2, 3, 4 other jobs on the go at the same time, because that's the sort of work consultants do. And of course, if you have their complete focus, if they're just working for you, you can have other problems. Most taxation agencies will start looking at your company real closely if you hire consultants only. They start calling that personal services contract. And you're going to get audited, and they're going to come and get you. Because then your consultant isn't really a consultant, they're really an employee, and you haven't been paying them or the government properly. And that is a huge risk, and as a consultant myself, I can tell you, I have to dance around that issue all the time. So the primary risk, though, is one that comes from both of these, is that when the consultant's contract is over, and when that rock star gets their new opportunity, they take all that knowledge and they walk out the door. And that knowledge is really one of your company assets. And having it get up and walk out the door is kind of a problem for most people. So, since I'm telling you these things are bad, I guess I should provide an alternative. Puppy break time. That's Cinder when she was a little puppy. Don't you think that's really cute? Come on, say it's cute. Aww. There we go. Okay, so I think that people, companies, startups don't really spend enough time thinking about growing their team. Growing it organically. Not just adding additional warm bodies, but improving, leveling up your entire team. The first step towards leveling up your team is knowing your team. And again, I can tell you that most companies don't spend enough time knowing the people that work for them. Are they single? Are they married? Are they workaholics? They work all night? Do they have kids? How about pets? You guys all know now I have dogs, right? Maybe they have aging parents. Maybe they have illnesses or disabilities. None of these things are to be discriminated about or, a bad thing, because, this is life. People get married. People have kids. It just is. But you need to know these things so that you can slot people into the most effective places, and so that you know what some of their limitations are. We'll get back to that. Another thing that you really need to know is your entire technology stack, your ecosystem. You've got to have this stuff down. And this is one of the things that most companies don't spend enough time thinking about, It's how many things you need to know. Let's take, for example, your typical Rails application end-to-end. So starting with development, and starting with just the basics. We have Ruby. Okay, well, it's not just Ruby now though, is it? It's Ruby, and it's JavaScript, or it's CoffeeScript. And when we talk about Ruby, is it like MRI, JRuby, Rubinius? Have you got old projects and new projects? Maybe you've got something back on 1.8, 1.9. You gotta know these differences. Are you using Rails or Sinatra, or maybe now you're moving forward in Backbone or Angular? Are you using ERB or Haml, SAS or CSS or less? It's starting to add up, isn't it? JavaScript or CoffeeScript. So we're doing testing. Are we using Minitest, test unit, RSpec? Are we using a mocking framework? Mocha, FlexMock? Are we using Factorial? Are you doing integration or acceptance tests? Do you know Cucumber, Capybara, WebRack? How about doing your client-side testing? Are you using Jasmine? What was that other framework?
Okay.
Yeah. More client-side testing for scalability, like browser mod, browser stack. How about just your basic developer tool stack? Your operating system, your editors, your version control, your debuggers, your profilers, your continuous integration tool. Okay, that was just development. We haven't even got to deploying your app yet. On the deployment side, you may be on a completely different operating system, developing on your Mac, probably most likely deploying on Linux. And how about your database? Setting up and configuring a production database is a whole different thing than setting up and configuring a development database. For basic deploys, are you doing it on Heroku, which is great, and you can do stuff really fast? Or do you have other constraints? You can't go there. Maybe you need to have a VPS. What Linux distro are you using? What kind of hardware? How much memory are you going to need? How much hard disk? Are you going to have RAID configuration? How about a firewall? All this stuff, it's part of all your ops. How about managing all that after it's deployed? You got backups, monitoring, analytics. These are all things that you need to know. All things that if you hired that Rockstar, that they need to know. Honestly, do you think even a Rockstar can keep on top of every single one of those technologies that's part of your stack? Frankly, I think that can be done for a few pieces of the stack, but you can't honestly say that you are on top of everything that's going on across an entire development and deployment stack. You can't. And even if you do have a guy that does that, you keep him at it for a couple of years, and he's not going to look like that anymore. He's going to look like that. Okay. So, now that I've explained that you have way too many things for people to actually stay on top of, let's talk about training. You got to spend a little bit of time training. Maybe you're an independent yourself. You need to spend some time training yourself. Part of the company, you need to train your staff. This is part of the whole organic growth thing. Training is how you grow. And it's not just about money. Companies often spend a little too much time when it comes down to training, thinking about how much it's going to cost them in terms of hard dollars to pay for a course, go to a conference. That's just one part of the cost. Time is an equally important part of training. Because unless you give your people time to both learn, absorb, and try out what they've been trained in, then half of the value of the training is wasted. Because people won't remember if you haven't given them time to absorb. There's also different types of learning and training out there. Remember how we were going to know our team? If you don't know your team, you won't know what the most effective way of training them will be. There's self-learning types of training, web-based, screencasts, people can read books. These are all types of self-learning. There's more formal types of learning, where you can go away on courses like Pragmatic Studio. You can send them on certifications. I know everybody in the audience is going, certifications. If you want to learn how to do, database tuning, you might want to do certification. And of course, conferences. Okay, we're all in conferences. Conferences are great learning experiences. Another way to level up is you don't just send a person to a conference or to a course or pay for some sort of online learning and just get one person to have that value. You want to spread that out across your team. It multiplies the effect of that, of making that training purchase, that training investment. Anyone taking training should know that it is their obligation to come back and pass some of that on to the rest of the team. Now, one of the ways you can do this is by having stuff like lunch and learns. That's what we do at the place where I'm working right now. They have lunch and learns. There's also bar camps. Those are fun. Here we go back to know your team again. If you have a whole bunch of married people, kids, bar camp, bad idea. They're never going to do it. Lunch and learn, on the other hand, they'll like that. On the other hand, if you have a whole bunch of single workaholics, bar camp all the way. But, now this is the real problem that a lot of places have. But if I spend all that money on training these people and they get up and leave, simple math here, okay? Replacing an unhappy developer is almost always going to cost the company more than doing what it takes to keep them happy and keep them. I know that sounds strange, but it's true. And it's not just in terms of, paying those finder's fees out to the headhunters. It's the amount of time it costs, the investment in time, again, to replace people is appalling. So do what it takes to keep your people. Don't cheap out on stuff like training, because if someone feels valued, if they think you're investing in them, they actually will stay. I've seen this over and over. People that think that their company values them enough to send them on that training course, to let them take time from their job to do, self-paced learning, they feel valued. They don't feel like they're just, another warm body down in the trenches, another replaceable cog in the machine. They think that you care and that you value their contribution to the company. And that helps increase engagement. So I know I feel engaged in a project if the company is willing to say, hey, we don't know about this new technology, why don't you go on a course, pay for the screencast, whatever, take some time, learn it. It's a nice feeling. It's an engagement feeling. And we need engagement. Every single member of the team needs to be engaged and needs to feel ownership. And one of the ways to get people to feel ownership is to start divvying up responsibilities. Those rock stars shouldn't be responsible for everything. You need to start slicing and dicing off some of those pieces of the staff and making sure other people have those responsibilities. Not everyone can be an expert in every single piece of the stack. So split it up. Make sure that you have a primary and a secondary person for each piece that is part of your critical technology stack. Because when you have that whole hit by a bus thing, or something more simple, maybe they're just on vacation. Maybe you want them to actually, get a break on vacation and not be on call every single day they're away. Maybe they get sick. There's not that many women in the audience, but there's things like maternity leave. These people walk away for a while. You don't want to be solely dependent on someone who's going to disappear for a while. If you have a secondary, they can step up and start taking on responsibility. But just declaring your primary, your secondary, your primary, your secondary isn't really enough. You need a little bit more than that, okay? You need to convince developers that they need to participate, okay? And by participate, I mean, most developers, they're kind of introverts. You probably haven't noticed that. But you can't just sit back and say, yeah, I'm primary, and that's it, because that's not good enough. There are hundreds, thousands of resources out there on the web for your various pieces of technology. Use them. There will be mailing lists. There will be blogs. You will have Twitter accounts. They might have an IRC chat channel, maybe a Google forum. Make sure your people get out there and start participating. Maybe they start off by just lurking for a while. That's fine, because when you don't really know much, when you're just starting out, lurking is how you learn. And after you've lurked for a while, maybe you start to ask questions. After you've learned a little bit more, maybe you start to answer questions. This is where the real give and take participation starts to happen. This is how you stay on top of your bits and pieces of technology. The whole point is to make the effort to stay on top. Know the issues. What are the bugs? What are the incompatibilities? Are there stability issues? If you're going to be a primary that's responsible for something, you have to know these things. And as a primary for something, you need to be the one that plans for upgrades. Unless your tool is completely stagnant, and that's the smell, so be careful. If it doesn't ever change, that might be a problem. You will need to manage updates. That means going out and participating in things like beta tests. We all use Git, right? Make a branch. Start using the beta test. Get an idea of what its impact is going to be. If you need a second opinion, hey, you've got your second here, and get them to work on it with you. And then once you've been using that beta test, you'll be well situated to use a release candidate when it comes out, and well positioned to move to it as soon as it's stable. And once you start doing all of that, maybe you should start thinking about, if it's open source, maybe you can start contributing back. It's my public service announcement. Honestly, given the conference in the room, everybody here is using some piece of open source software. And I think it is a damn shame how few people actually contribute back. Spend a little time. Spend a little time. If you're becoming one of these primary responsible people, spend the time to become an expert. You'll start to know things. You'll start to see things. You'll be able to fix those bugs. And you should do it. And your company should start giving you time. This whole time thing, I come back to that a lot, don't I? All of this stuff takes time. And I will not ever say that it doesn't, but I will say that you need to factor that in to your sustainable pace, okay? We're all doing, well, maybe not everybody's doing all agile. We all aspire to be doing agile development, right? A sustainable pace is what you can do, not by working tons of overtime, not by working every weekend, but working, solidly every day at a sustainable pace. You need to factor in stuff like training and developing expertise in your tool set into your sustainable pace. It's also important to, after you've got all this set up, to not allow your team to stagnate. Find, if there's really cool pieces of technology out there that you're using, there's also ones that you're using that are kind of crafty. Some of them are downright unpleasant to use. If you're the primary doing that, and you're doing that week after week, month after month, year after year, that's not too pleasant. So what you should probably try to do is start rotating responsibility within your team. After someone's been primary in something nasty for a while, give them a chance to switch out. Let their secondary step up, be primary for a while, and let them go off and work on something a little more fun. Because, again, you don't want those developers to get bored and frustrated and leave on you. The whole point of this is to make people be engaged. So, I hope I have started to answer a bit about what I think growing your team means. It means training new people. It means getting them to participate. And it means developing expertise. And in fact, I think all of those form a kind of virtuous circle. And if you do enough of this for long enough, it's like applying continuous improvement to your development team. And that, guys, is how you grow your team into something better than all the rock stars and consultants out there. And Finnegan is saying it's time. We're done. Yes, this is what I get every day at the end of the day. Okay, so that's it. There's my contact info. I have the slides all posted already. I'll tweet the link in a moment. But do we have any questions? Anybody? No? Okay, we're done.